Welcome to Stoicism Breath. The truth about narcissists may surprise you. They are not afraid of your anger. They are not shaken when you cry, yell, or even expose them. In fact, every tear you shed, every late night text you send, every restless thought you dedicate to them becomes fuel for the fragile but inflated ego they've built their entire life around. To a narcissist, your reaction, whether it's love or hate, means one thing: they still control a space inside your mind. But here's the turning point. One day the tears stop. The anger fades. You no longer wait for apologies, explanations, or closure. You simply feel nothing. And that silence, what looks like peace from the outside, is a devastating earthquake inside the narcissist's world. Because to them, silence isn't just no contact, it's the ultimate loss of control.
Think about it. How can they manipulate someone who no longer feels? How can they dominate someone who no longer expects? When you step out of the script they wrote for you, no longer begging, no longer proving, no longer fighting, you break the entire game. Not through hate, not through revenge, but through healing. This is the moment the narcissist fears the most, when your inner calm becomes their fatal wound, because now there is nothing left for them to hold on to. In today's video, we're going to uncover exactly what happens in their psychology when they realize you no longer care. From denial control tactics, rage and truth distortion, to the emptiness and collapse of identity. And you'll see one powerful truth: narcissists are never truly afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing the version of themselves that only existed in your reflection. And here's the liberating part: you don't need revenge to win. You don't need them to admit they were wrong.
You only need to walk away and no longer belong to them. Stage one begins with denial. When they first realize your texts have stopped, your reactions have disappeared, and your presence is no longer orbiting their world, their first instinct is not heartbreak, it's disbelief. They tell themselves, they're just testing me. There's no way this is real. Because in their distorted view of reality, the idea that you've truly stopped caring is impossible. They're too used to you coming back, apologizing, softening, or resisting. So they twist the truth. They convince themselves you're upset or playing some game waiting to be chased. To them, silence cannot mean the end. It must be another move in the emotional chessboard they still believe they control. That's why in denial, they begin to test you. A vague post on social media, a casual text like just checking in a message, passed through mutual friends, or maybe even showing up somewhere they know you'll notice them. But none of this is about love. It's about power. They need proof that you're still watching, still hoping, still reacting. And when you don't respond, when you don't take the bait, the cracks in their illusion begin to show. For the first time, the narcissist starts to feel lost. This is only the beginning, and it's where your freedom truly starts. On Stoicism Breath, we explore the hidden truths behind human behavior and the quiet power of letting go. Every action from a narcissist is a test. Not because they care, but because they need to know they still have influence over you. A vague post, a random text, a casual, just checking in, all of it is bait. And when you don't react, when you don't get angry, when you don't let emotions take over, the denial that once shielded them begins to crack. Suddenly, doubt creeps in. Wait, is this real this time? For the first time, they're staring at a reality that doesn't revolve around them, so they double down. More signals, more emotional traps, more attempts to lure you back, but you stay silent. Not to play a game, not to punish, but because you're truly free. And in that silence, something they never expected begins to happen. They feel lost. No more mirror, no more echo, no more validation from the manipulations they once mastered. This isn't just about losing a partner, it's about losing the stage where they always played the star. And they're not ready to step off. That's when stage 2 begins reasserting control. The narcissist tells themselves, I can still pull them back. Their denial fractures, so they switch to action. No more vague hints. Now they roll out the strategies they believe will win you over again. Sweet messages filled with nostalgia, dramatic apologies, tearful promises of change. But make no mistake, this is not real remorse. This is fear. Fear of losing their grip, fear of losing the mirror that reflected their worth. For a narcissist, love was never about genuine connection. It was always about control. When you stayed, they could manipulate. When you were angry, they could recalibrate. When you pushed back, they could play the victim. But now you don't react at all. And that silence breaks the loop they once ruled. It sends them into panic. At this stage, their behavior becomes unpredictable. One moment they're gentle, the next they lash out with accusations, blaming you for being cold or cruel. Every swing between kindness and chaos is just a desperate search for an emotional opening, any weakness they can exploit to drag you back into being their mirror. They don't need you to return out of love. They just need you to respond, because to them, reaction means existence. Without it, their ego starts to collapse. Here's the paradox. The calmer you remain, the more chaotic they become. The quieter you are, the louder their inner screams grow. They may post smiling pictures online, flaunt a new partner, or project happiness to the world. But beneath the mask, panic festers. They know the truth. What once worked on you no longer has power. They're pulling at a rope you already let go of, refusing to face the reality that this time it's not just a pause, this time it's over. And that's where stage 3 emerges rage. When every tactic has failed, when control slips through their fingers, the calm exterior they've worn begins to crack. This is not the raw grief of heartbreak. It's the fury of entitlement. The anger of someone who always believed they would own a piece of you, now realizing they no longer do. On Stoicism Breath, we dive into the hidden storms that unfold when a narcissist realizes their control has slipped away. This stage is not about heartbreak, it's about fury. The fury of someone who always believed they held power over you, now forced to confront the truth they cannot accept. You don't need them anymore. In their mind, the question is never, why did you leave? But how dare you leave without apologizing? How dare you stay silent without falling apart? How dare you live well without me? To the narcissist, your independence feels like rebellion. And their independence doesn't just challenge their authority. It collapses the illusion of dominance they've built for years. Yet their rage doesn't always come in shouting matches or dramatic outbursts. Many narcissists will never raise their voice. Instead, they choose quieter, more destructive tactics. They start bending the truth, twisting stories, spreading rumors. They cast themselves as the victim, painting you as cold, heartless, the one who abandoned them. At this stage, their goal isn't to win you back. It's to rescue their image, especially in their own fragile perception of reality. Since they can no longer control you, they attempt to control how others see you. If they can't be remembered as the one who was loved, they'll settle for being remembered as the one who was hurt. No matter what mask they wear, hero, victim, or martyr, the objective remains the same: control, the narrative. This desperation may even drive them towards self-destructive behaviors. Some dive recklessly into shallow relationships, others spend impulsively or live chaotically, all in an attempt to escape the emptiness pressing in on them. But beneath all the noise, one silent truth pierces deeper than anything else. You no longer react. In the past, even a cold glance from you gave them proof they still existed in your world. But now you don't look, you don't speak, you don't feel. And to a narcissist, that's more than absence, it's erasure. For the first time, they are confronted with the reality they cannot cope with. You've truly let go. And so begins stage 4, rewriting the narrative. When rage fails to pull you back, they move to the next tactic, controlling the story. If they can't bend your emotions, they'll bend reality itself. They recast the roles. They are the noble, misunderstood victim, and you, the ungrateful, cold, inexplicably cruel villain. The truth no longer matters. What matters is creating a version of reality that spares them from feeling like a failure, because you never gave them the ending they wanted. No desperate begging, no dramatic return. They write their own ending, one that erases blame. You may have loved them deeply, forgiven, endlessly, tried to fix what you never broke. But in their retelling, you're the one who vanished. You become the unstable one, the controller, the manipulator disguised as kindness. Every sacrifice, every pain you carried, every act of love you gave is twisted into a weapon for one purpose: to protect the fragile ego that cracks a little more each day without your reflection. On Stoicism Breath, we uncover the quiet but devastating truth about what happens when you finally step away from a narcissist's grip. They cannot accept that you left simply because you had enough. They cannot stand the fact that you are now living in peace, smiling, moving forward, and not mentioning them at all. To a narcissist, being insignificant is worse than being hated. Hatred still means you feel something for them, but indifference, your silence, means they no longer exist in your world. And so they scramble to fill that void by creating narratives, twisting stories, and planting suspicion. Not because you matter to them anymore, but because they cannot bear the idea of being forgotten. What they never expect is your refusal to play the game. You don't explain, you don't defend yourself, you don't rush to repair the damage they've done to your reputation. And that silence wounds them more deeply than any confrontation ever could. Because the moment you stop fighting to protect your image, you step off the board entirely. They can rewrite the story 1,000 different ways, but they can never recreate the mirror that once reflected them so clearly, the mirror that was you. This leads them into stage 5, emptiness. After denial, manipulation, rage, and rewriting the story, the narcissist faces the one thing they've avoided all their life: the void within. No one left to manipulate, no eyes left to impress, no emotions left to feed on. They tumble into a space no amount of attention or validation can fill. At their core, narcissists don't build an identity from within like emotionally healthy people do. They survive through reflection, through how others see them, through praise, through conflict, even through contempt. Every response, even a glance, reassures them that they still matter in someone's world. But when you stop looking, when you don't love, don't hate, don't even acknowledge it, feels as though they are being erased from reality itself. This isn't heartbreak. This is a full-blown identity crisis. The narcissist begins to ask a question they have no answer for. Who am I when no one is telling me who I am? A question so simple, yet for them, it's a bottomless pit. Because they never truly knew themselves. They only knew what others reflected. He's charming, she's admirable, they're powerful. But when you leave quietly without explanation, that mirror shatters. Suddenly, they are invisible. No one left to provoke jealousy. No one to play the victim for. No one to compare their new partner with. All the scripts they once directed, all the roles they once played, now unfold on an empty stage. And in the silence, for the very first time, they encounter something they've spent their whole life running from non-existence. A cold, drifting, disconnected emptiness, as if every mask they've ever worn has fallen away, exposing a hollow self they don't recognize and cannot understand. You, the one who once saw them most clearly, are no longer there to see them at all. And in the eyes of someone new, they are nothing more than a recycled performance, no depth, no authenticity, not real. What truly drives them mad is not simply that you left. It's that you once saw them, their real self, hidden behind the mask, and you still chose to walk away. That kind of emptiness cannot be patched with material things, with praise, or with new relationships, because the problem was never about who stood next to them. The problem is that deep inside, they were never truly standing within themselves. This leads to stage 6, the search for a replacement. When your reflection disappears, they don't turn inward to find identity or healing. Instead, they begin a desperate, frantic search for another mirror, anyone who can help them feel real again. They rush into shallow romances, making grand promises, posting stage photos of happiness. But this isn't love. This isn't healing. It's avoidance. It's the proof that they cannot stand to be alone with themselves. The new person isn't chosen because of genuine connection. They're chosen because they can temporarily reflect the ego you once validated. The script repeats itself: whirlwind, romance, dramatic declarations, public displays of affection. It looks convincing from the outside, but inside it's hollow. Because deep down, the narcissist knows a painful truth: you are different. You are the one who saw behind the mask, who sensed the fractures, who touched the fragile part they tried so hard to hide. And when you left, you took something irreplaceable, the only glimpse they ever had of their true self. A new partner may be easier to control, easier to please, less likely to question. But without depth, without insight, they can never reflect what you once did. And so every smile, every conversation with someone new becomes a haunting reminder of you, not because of love, but because you were the only mirror that showed them clearly. That's why they compare. That's why they secretly check on you or mention you in vague, nameless conversations. No matter how hard they try, no one else can replace you. And for the narcissist, that realization is both an obsession and a torment. So they keep running from one person to the next, recycling empty lines, chasing after a script that has already collapsed. But the harder they chase, the more breathless they become. Because no one has ever made them feel both exposed and accepted the way you did. And now no one is left who's willing to see them in that light again. This is where they enter stage 7, ego collapse. After the frantic searching, the recycled scripts, the countless failed attempts to replace you, the narcissist faces something far more terrifying than rejection: a deep internal unraveling, an existential crisis for which they have no language and no tools, because they never built a real self. Since childhood, their survival depended on how others saw them, not on who they truly were inside. And now, with your silence stripping away the last reflection, they no longer know who they are. On Stoicism Breath, we arrive at the darkest stage of the narcissist's unraveling, the quiet collapse that happens when every mask, every role, every strategy has failed. They grew up in a world where self-worth was measured not by who they were, but by how well they could control, please, or manipulate others. And now, with you no longer part of their equation, they face a question they cannot answer. Who am I if there's no one left to control? Their inner world becomes hollow, like a room stripped of mirrors, windows, and light. All the identities they once wore, the seductive lover, the wounded victim, the powerful achiever, become meaningless without someone there to validate them. Like a lost child, they stumble into crisis. But unlike a child, they lack the emotional maturity and vocabulary to name the pain. Outwardly, they may keep up appearances, going to work smiling in photos, posting cheerful updates, but their eyes begin to look empty. Their behavior grows distorted, sleep becomes shallow, panic attacks creep in, and perhaps most painfully of all, they stop recognizing themselves in the mirror. Not in a literal sense, but in a psychological one. They look and see nothing, no identity, no meaning, no center. This is a quiet collapse. And because their world has never allowed them to appear weak, they cannot admit it. They won't say, I'm not okay. To do so would require a stable self, strong enough to face vulnerability, something they never built. So the pain festers, not from losing you, but from the void your absence revealed. A space once filled with your gaze, your emotions, your sincerity, things they never truly valued yet cannot replace. And that's when the brutal truth lands. It was never about losing you. It was about never truly having themselves. This brings us to stage 8, the quiet ending. When every tactic is exhausted, every role has fallen apart, and no one is left to play, pretend with the narcissist is left with a silence of their own making. A world without you, the one who once illuminated the parts of them they could never face. But unlike your silence, which brings peace, healing, and growth, theirs is the silence of being stuck. While you walk forward, heart heavy, yet determined, rebuilding yourself with truth and dignity, they remain trapped in the same endless loop. Manipulation, reaction, control, blame, round and round with no escape. And in the deepest part of their being, they feel it, not in words, but in their gut. They've lost the one thing that once made them feel truly seen. But here lies the cruelest truth: they will never admit it. Not to you, not to anyone, maybe not even to themselves. Because to admit it would mean confronting something more painful than abandonment, the fact that they were once genuinely loved and they destroyed it with their own hands. The victory was never in revenge. It was never in waiting for their apology. It came the moment you let go, not of them, but of the illusion you once held. Because what you clung to wasn't who they truly were. It was a version of themselves they never had the courage to become. Walking away didn't mean you won the argument, didn't mean you staged a dramatic final act, and it didn't mean you needed applause. The real triumph was realizing you no longer needed them to understand. And while they may smile beside someone new, flaunt new accomplishments, or polish their image to the world, deep down, they remain stuck in the same script. A story where the stage is dark because their most loyal audience has left, and the theatre will never light up for them again. You don't defeat a narcissist with words. You don't teach them a lesson through anger. You don't need their confession to heal. The real victory is born in silence, the quiet strength of walking away and never looking back, not out of bitterness, not out of coldness, but because you have outgrown the game they tried to trap you in. You once loved, you once forgave, you once believed that if you were patient, if you gave enough, they would change. But then you discovered a hard truth: no one can heal a person who refuses to face themselves. And so you made the bravest choice of all to let go without needing a response. In their world, your silence is collapse, but in yours, it is rebirth. You're no longer chained to someone else's emotions, no longer defining your worth by someone else's gaze. You stepped out of their script and into the light, beginning a new story where you finally take your rightful place as the main character. And maybe they will never understand why you left. Maybe they will never acknowledge the truth you once offered. But none of that matters anymore, because you no longer need validation from someone who only ever saw your reactions, never your soul. No, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need a perfect closure. You don't need them to know that you're okay. Because the peace you've built within yourself is the answer. Not for them, for you. You are the one who walked out of the darkness scarred, but standing tall, choosing to keep moving forward. And if you ever find yourself questioning whether you made the right choice, remember this unshakable truth. The narcissist lost you the very moment they tried to control you.